Does it seem like Christians believe Jesus was a gun-toting, Republican-voting, blue-collar guy? Or that Jesus was a peaceful hippie wanting everyone to share everything? Well, which is it? Does Christian automatically mean conservative?
The elephant in the pew.
Hey, you found Elephant in the Pew, your daily resource that engages the world from a Christian viewpoint and looks at the topics everybody wants to discuss, but nobody really wants to talk about. I am Ryan Ramsey. It is great to be back with you, and guess what? Elephant in the Pew is back with a new format. Until now, you've heard us on our podcast, but now not only do you get the audio podcast in a daily form by going to elephantpew.com and all other podcast outlets like iTunes or Google, but we are now on YouTube. That's right, on YouTube. So now you can hit that subscribe button as hard as you want because you can get Steven and Ryan every single weekday. That's right. So check it out. Hit that subscribe button and maybe like if you think about it. I don't know. So we're excited to be back, and I'm excited to talk to you about this today because does Republican equal Christian? You know, where I come from, it seems that way. Seems like if you don't have a conservative mentality, you're like run out of the church because, man, how can you believe that? Or how could you be a Democrat and not like support, you know, the bad things that Democrats support? That's very much hand in hand. So this whole political environment is very wrapped up in the church and what you believe, and so somehow those two got connected. So when I was growing up, I assumed that all Christians were Republicans that voted for George Bush, right? So when I got out into the world and I began to meet other really good Christians, but then they told me things like, oh, well, I'm a Democrat, or I vote for this, or I do that, it was really hard for me to reconcile the two. So it made me want to research this a little bit more. So I did some research, and I went to pewresearch.org, and I found out that, yes, a lot of people who are believers in Jesus Christ are Republicans. However, I found something else out. A lot of believers in Jesus Christ aren't Republicans by the numbers. So I'm looking at this chart, and I'll put a link in the description. But it says the top, what I would consider evangelical church is the Church of the Nazarene, with 63% of the Church of Nazarene people reporting that they are Republicans. Okay? Then next you have the Southern Baptist, then Lutherans, Assemblies of God, Presbyterians, Church of God, Anglican Church, United Methodist Church, and then down to 50% then is the Churches of Christ, okay? So we drop a little bit lower. The Catholic Church only says that there's 37% that's Republican and the rest are Democrat. And then you drop further down into Episcopal Church. United Church of Christ says that it's only 31% Republican, 58% Democrat. And then even further down, like Church of God in Christ, only 14%. And then like African American Episcopal Church, which is primarily, obviously, black and African American, would be only 4% Republican and 92% Democrat. So is it that followers of Jesus Christ tend to be on the side of the Republicans, or that your perspective is probably skewed by what's around you? Like me, I didn't grow up with a lot of those other sects of Christianity that I listed last that were more democratic. I didn't grow up with those around me, so all I saw were the top ones that were all Republican in a very kind of red state area, right? So it kind of it looks a lot more diverse than maybe what you see. So I want to talk a little bit about how this has been shaped, right? So you have the right wing, they're conservatives or the Republicans, right? And so their number one thing was they would go to Romans 13. And Romans 13 is the chapter where Paul instructs the Roman Christian to submit to the government, you know, and kind of be a peaceful, contributing member of society, all of those things. So it would fall in line with that whole, okay, we need to, you know, be a part of the government, you know, be wrapped up in that. And we as Christians need to be part of that. It kind of defines us a little bit. So we see how a right winger or a conservative person would get that. Well, left wing would look at Acts, and the book of Acts talks about communal living, how the early church all poured everything they had together into one pot, and they lived together off of that one, you know, that one living. And so it looks more like what you would call communism or socialism, to be honest, Christian communism, so in pure love. So we've seen some societies try communism, and it didn't really work out for them because of the whole sin nature of humans, right? We have a trouble living on that whole idea where we all work and we do as hard as we can and we all get the same pay. Like, that's hard for us. It doesn't motivate us to work harder. And so as Christians, we think that Jesus encouraged us, and the early church encouraged this. And so the left wing would lean more towards that, a stronger government to do that. Now, if you would look at Roman Catholics, they like to reference what's called the Christian Empire, right? And we see this in the early Roman Catholic Church. Right, they had the huge basilicas. They had basically the government was ran by the church, and so they see this as the way it should be. A lot of Catholics would see this as the way it should be, and this is largely encouraged by the book City of God. Right, so the book City of God is written by Augustine of Hippo, and it talks about how the church is, the city of God and how it functions and all that. So, that's how a Catholic could see it, and it's a totally different perspective than what a conservative or a left wing would see it, right? And then there's the whole other scope of things. Like, think about like Occupy movement and all that. Which would be anarchism. And now anarchism can even pull references from the Bible too. So they see in Revelation the beast as sometimes they can see it as the government. That the government is the beast and it's come to destroy us. And so as believers in Christ, and what happens in the end, we should revolt against the beast and not take the mark and stand up against it, right? So that's another view that comes from the Bible. Now all of these views are equally valid, but they are views that people would get from being a follower of Christ and could get from the Bible with poor interpretation on some of them, right? But that leaves me to one big question, and what was Jesus' view of this whole thing? Because I don't think Jesus was much about left-wing, right-wing, an empire, having a church empire, or, completely revolting against the system. He wasn't for any of those things. What Jesus was he didn't really care about politics, to be honest. He never really wanted to be caught up in it. In fact, when they tried to trap him in the whole taxes thing, Jesus simply said, whose face is on the coin? Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. He didn't get involved. He just, hey, the things of this world belong to the world and not to me. He did call us to love radically, which I would say none of the political parties call us to do, right? None of them are asking us to love abundantly or extravagantly. They're all calling us to certain agendas and certain things that want to be done, but none of them are calling us to love radically. And then the last thing that Jesus told us to do is to go and make disciples. Certainly you don't see any political party calling us to go and make disciples. That's the church alone, right? So in these three big things that Jesus called us to do, none of them have anything to do with politics or being a part of the political system, right? It's almost like he's just asked us to endure it and get along with it for the sake of ignoring it so that you can go on and do what he asked you to do. I guess what I'm thinking is, if I am more concerned about politics and what's going on in government, if I'm more concerned about who's president and what he's doing than I am about my own participation in making disciples and being a voice for the gospel of Jesus Christ, then I think I have some questions that I need to ask myself. But I want to know what you guys think. Does it make it easier to be a Christian if you are a conservative? Or maybe it makes it easier if you're a Democrat? I don't know. What do you guys think? Let us know what you think in the comments below, or email us at hello@elephantpew.com. Thanks so much for joining us on this patriotic week, this 4th of July, our Independence Day celebration. Check out Stephen's video from yesterday right here if you want to hear a cool story about God working during the Revolutionary War. And consider liking this video before you leave. But don't forget to punch that subscribe button on your way out. Thanks, and see all you free peoples next time. Check, check. Ow, that was loud. Incredibly loud. Here's Reagan.